Good morning and welcome to the Maryland Public Service Commission's administrative meeting for December 9th, 2020. We'll begin with review and approval of the minutes from our meeting on December 2nd, 2020. The vote of those minutes begins with Commissioner Herman.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. The minutes are approved. Good morning, Mr. Secretary.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. There are two items on today's consent agenda. Item number 1 is an interconnection agreement amendment from Verizon Maryland LLC and Lumos Networks LLC. And item number 2 is a customer assignment notification from NG Retail LLC, DBA Think Energy.
Thank you. Seeing no questions from the commissioners on these items, with respect to item number 1, I move that we approve the interconnection agreement amendment 10 days after a 30-day comment period unless adverse comments are filed. And with respect to number 2, that we note the filing. The vote begins with Commissioner Herman.
I vote aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motions are approved. Mr. Secretary, the administrative agenda.
Mr. Chairman, item number 3 on today's administrative agenda is a request from the Potomac Edison Company for a CPCN waiver to modify the length of a tap line from the existing Dobbs Monocacy 230 kV transmission line to a new West Jefferson substation located in Frederick County, Maryland. On this item, we have for staff Christopher Lowe and James Gregg, and for the company Jeffrey Trout and Daniel Graham.
Thank you. We'll begin with the representative from the commission staff.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Christopher Lowe on behalf of staff. This item concerns a request from Potomac Edison Company for a certificate of public convenience and necessity waiver pursuant to Public Utilities Article Section 7-207B4. PUA Section 7-207 requires an electric company to obtain a CPCN prior to commencing construction of an overhead transmission line that is designed to carry a voltage in excess of 69 kV. However, exceptions are outlined within the article. PUA Section 7-207B4I further states that the Commission shall waive the CPCN requirement should it find that the construction does not require the company to obtain new property or rights-of-ways through eminent domain, or require larger or higher structures to accommodate increased voltage or high conductors. On November 6, 2020, Potomac Edison filed a request to the Commission for a waiver of the CPCN requirements pursuant to PUA Section 7-207B4I. The request includes the work to increase the length of a tap line that connects to the existing Dobbs Monocacy 230 kV line to the new West Jefferson substation located in Frederick County, Maryland. This work is in addition to this project scope that was granted by the Commission at the April 3, 2019 administrative meeting. As part of refining the substation site plan to obtain necessary permits, Potomac Edison determined that the best way to handle stormwater runoff would be to locate a stormwater basin which required the substation pad location to be shifted approximately 100 feet further south along the transmission line right away. As a result, the span length of the tap line will also increase from 115 feet to 175 feet. The company asserts that the minor relocation of the substation and an increased length of the tap line will not materially change the project cost estimate. In its filing, all work will be performed on the property already subject to easements held by the company. Also, there will be no increase in the voltage or the size of any conductor. Based on staff's review of the filing and discovery responses from Potomac Edison, staff recommends that the Commission grant the mandatory waiver of the CPCN requirement pursuant to PUA Section 7-207B4I to modify the length of the tap line from the existing Dobbs to Monocacy 230 kV line to run to the new West Jefferson substation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe. We'll now hear from the company if they have any comments. Good afternoon, Mr. Trout.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Jeffrey Trout for Potomac Edison. We certainly agree with staff's analysis. We styled our request as an amendment to the waiver that the commission previously granted for this project. The commission had already authorized us to build the tap line. We were just seeking an amendment to that waiver because, as Mr. Lowe explained, the substation location is slightly different than when we first proposed this and the commission first approved it. And as a result, the length of the tap line is also different. If the commission chooses to style its resolution of this as a new waiver as opposed to an amendment to the existing waiver, the company has absolutely no objection to that. Either way would enable us to complete the construction.
Thank you, Mr. Trout. Do commissioners have questions of the parties? I will move that we grant the company's request for a waiver of the CPCN requirement under the Public Utilities Article, Section 7-207B4I, to modify the length of a tap line from the existing Dobbs to Monocacy 230 kilovolt transmission line to the new West Jefferson substation. The vote begins with Commissioner Herman.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion is approved.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, item number 4 consists of revised tariff pages in compliance with the final order in case number 9644 for Columbia Gas of Maryland, Inc. On this item for staff, we have Afton Hauer and Peter Wilson, and for the company, Megan Moore and Rebecca Danhires, as well as for OPC, Fred Hoover.
Good morning, Ms. Hauer.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Afton Hauer on behalf of staff. On May 15th, 2020, Columbia Gas of Maryland, Inc. filed an application with the Commission for authority to adjust its existing retail rates for the distribution of natural gas energy in its Maryland service territory. In the October 7th, 2020, Public Utility Law Judge proposed order, the Public Utility Law Judge approved the joint motion for approval of settlement filed by Columbia on September 16th, 2020. The proposed order accepted staff's recommended rate design, except for the residential class, where a system charge of $15.70 was approved and a revenue requirement of $3,300,000. The proposed order also approved the inclusion of operational order charges revenue as a credit to the commodity portion of the actual cost adjustment of the purchase gas adjustment. An amount of $202,992,200 in operational order charges revenue will be credited to the commodity portion of the ACA over a 3-year period, beginning with the ACA that commences in December 2020. The proposed order was approved by the Commission in order number 89665. The company's current filing reflects the changes approved in the Public Utility Law Judge proposed order in case number 9644. Staff has reviewed the company's proposed tariff revisions and finds that they comport with the proposed order. Staff recommends that the Commission accept the revised tariff pages for filing with an effective date of December 11, 2020. And I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hauer. We'll turn to the representative of the Maryland Office of People's Counsel if they have any comments to provide.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Fred Hoover on behalf of the Office of People's Counsel. We were a signatory to the settlement agreement. We have also reviewed the filing made by the company and find that it comports with the terms of the settlement agreement and the order from the Commission. So we have we agree with staff's recommendation on accepting the filing.
Thank you, Mr. Hoover. We'll next turn to the company if they have any comments to provide. Ms. Moore, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Megan Moore on behalf of Columbia Gas. We appreciate staff's recommendation and OPC's comments. I have nothing further to add, and I am here if there are any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Do the commissioners have questions of the parties? Seeing none, I would move that we accept the revised tariff pages for filing with an effective date of December 11th, 2020. The vote begins with Commissioner Herman.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion is approved.
Mr. Chairman, item number 5 on today's agenda is a request from Brick Kiln Solar LLC to extend the construction and operation deadlines in its CPCN in case number 9454. On this item for staff, we have James Greger and Roger Austin. For the company, David Bielgemans and Kevin Clark. For DNR PPRP, we have Bob Sedzinski and Steve Towson.
Thank you. Good morning, staff.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Roger Austin on behalf of staff. February 6, 2018, the Commission issued an order granting Brick Kiln Road Solar, LLC, a CPCN to construct a 5.0 facility. One of the conditions proposed by the Maryland Department of Natural Resources Power Plant Research Program, PPRP, and adopted in the Commission's order, stipulated that construction and operation of the project must commence within 3 years of receiving the CP for operation, not later than 4 years after receipt of the CPCN. If the project is not completed and operational within 4 years of the issuance of the final order, the CPCN shall expire and no longer constitute authorization to construct and operate the project. On November 9th, 2020, Brick Kiln asking for a 3-year extension of the construction and operational deadlines proposed by PPRP as part of its licensing conditions. Through no fault of its own, the company is unable to meet its deadlines due to the interconnecting utility in performing the facility studies in its PJ.
It's cutting out too much, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Austin, can you turn off your video? It may be degrading the quality of your audio.
Is this better?
It sounds better. Yes, thank you.
Okay. So I was saying, through no fault of its own, the company is unable to meet its deadlines due to the interconnecting utility Delmarva Power falling significantly behind schedule in performing the facility studies in its PJM interconnection queue. Until this final study in the PJM interconnection review process is completed, a company wishing to connect a generating facility to the grid will be unable to sign the required interconnection and construction agreements and begin actual construction. On November 24th, PPRP filed a letter with the Commission stating that extension requested that if the Commission issues an order granting extension, it requires Kiln when it decides to begin to file an updated application, site plan, and supporting documents detailing any changes made to the project, including the interconnection route and facilities. PPRP have materials and period of time in which to submit revised or new conditions to the CPCN for Commission. Staff recommends that the Commission grant the company's request for an extension of the construction and operational deadlines outlined within its approved CPCN, subject to review and approval by the Commission.
I missed the last sentence.
Mr. Austin, can you please repeat the last sentence? You broke up.
Okay. Staff recommends that the Commission grant the company's request for an extension of the operational deadlines outlined within its approved CPCN, subject to review and approval of any new requirements and conditions proposed by PPRP. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll I'll next recognize Counsel for the Department of Natural Resources Power Plant Research Program.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Steve Tolson, Assistant Attorney General on behalf of DNR PPRP. I believe Mr. Austin has pretty succinctly summarized the letter we filed on November 24th. Obviously, we're at the end or getting near the end of the period for the first start of construction and operation. And if it's another 3 years before construction operation starts, PPRP recognizes and understands that things may have changed. For example, the selection of panels to be used or whatever may change. So it would like an opportunity to get an updated filing from whoever holds the CPCN at that time, to have an opportunity to briefly review it, and then ask the commission for a determinate time in which to submit any proposed updated or new licensing conditions if warranted, based on the filing. And so that's the position that's been taken, and we don't have anything more to add. I do have Mr. Sidzinski online with me today if the commission does have questions.
Mr. Tolson, I'll now recognize the representative from Brick Hill Road Solar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. David Bugelman's on behalf of Brick Hill Road Solar LLC. I also have with me Kevin Clark, a project manager from Urban Grid. Brick Hill supports staff's and PPRP's recommendations on this request. We're here to answer any questions, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Bugelmans. Do the commissioners have questions for the parties on this item? Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to go to staff. Mr. Austin, please clarify for me. So when I read the buck sheet, I thought the delay was at PJM. They had promised the completion of their interconnection study, I think around October of 2018. We're years beyond that, but I thought I just heard you say it was the company, the utility company. Where does the delay lie, with the utility company or with PJM?
Right. The facility studies. Three studies within the PJM interconnection process. There is the feasibility study that's performed by PJM. There's a system impact study that's also performed by PJM. And then PJM sends it over to the utilities to give a final engineering review and cost estimates and everything. That's a facility study.
So it's the utility who has causing the delay?
Correct.
Okay, and the utility is Delmarva Power and Light. Okay, and as much as Mr. Chairman, this commission has been criticized by some renewable energy advocates and some environmental advocates for delaying these solar projects. This is a classic example of where the commission is not responsible for this delay, even though we get credit from it for that delay in some quarters. And I wanted to highlight that, and I think we ought to figure out why there's a 2-year delay on these projects from some of the utilities that we regulate. It's a PJM, there's not a lot we can do about it except ask them. But the utility, we can certainly ask them some questions about this. I'm sure that we don't have the utility representative with us.
Commissioner O'Donnell, if you would allow me, thanks to our chief engineer, who insisted that we ask the utility to redirect.
Mr. Austin, Mr. Austin, can you repeat that, because your audio is breaking up?
Yeah, I was saying, chief engineer asked us to look in with our behind in their study, and the company replied that they expect to finalize this particular study by the end of this year, 2020. They said several delays were experienced by the company due to the high volume of facilities of the request and additional internal capital projects involving the same equipment and substations. which require revisions to the scope/approach of the study. In addition, there were organizational and personnel changes which contributed to the delays.
Has staff taken a look at how many of these extensions for granted CPCNs we're anticipating because of these types of delays in these interconnection agreements? We may want to take a look at that, because if we're going to get a deluge, we see Mr. Bugelman's very often, and I want to know how many more of these are going to be coming through the pipeline. I think maybe we should get a handle on how backlogged are they. If this one's 2 years delayed and has to get an extension, how many more? Because it eats up state resources at PPRP, it eats up resources at our staff, and it eats up time in general, and time is money. So maybe we ought to have an accounting of how many of these delays are out there because the utilities can't provide on their promises. Let me ask a question of PPRP. Mr. Tolson, if PPRP develops new conditions as a result of these delays, how will that come before the commission proper if you do develop new conditions? Will it be brought back to us through a filing and maybe an admin meeting, or how will that occur in the future going forward?
Commissioner O'Donnell, I believe it would be in an admin meeting based on the provisions of the order, that whatever order that the commission issues as a result of this proceeding, if they are required to file the updated site plans and notify us of any changes to the original application, then PPRP would probably file a letter, or I would file it on their behalf, saying they've reviewed that and either there are no changes and we can proceed, or we need a couple of weeks or whatever period of time to review the submission and draft new conditions. It depends on how extensive it is. This is not a big project, as I recall, but 3 years is a long time in the energy industry. Things can change. If you get new panels, you get new layouts. So they just want an opportunity to sort of freshen up the original conditions if needed.
So if you needed more time to review the project, say you needed 3-4 weeks, and then you develop new conditions, then you would file those new conditions with us for approval, right?
Yes, Commissioner, we would do that unless somehow you thought it was appropriate to take it back to the public utility law judge that presided over the original proceeding. It could also be done there, but if it's not extensive, I guess it would be appropriate to refer it back to a public utility law judge if there's major changes that might require new public hearings.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, I'll mute again.
Thank you. Additional questions from the commissioners? Seeing none, I would move that we grant the company's request for an extension of the construction and operational deadlines outlined within its approved certificate of public convenience and necessity, subject to review and approval by the commission of any new requirements and conditions imposed by DNR's power plant research program. The vote begins with Commissioner Herman.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion is approved.
Mr. Chairman, item number 6 is a request for a CPCN amendment from Mattawoman Energy LLC that was held over from the November 4th administrative meeting. This is in case number 9330. On this item, there are several participants, including Craig Taborski and James Greger for staff. For the Office of People's Counsel, Philip Sheehan. For the company, Ian Shavitz, Brandon Upchurch, and Brad Pekas. For Power Plant Research Program and Maryland Department of Environment, Steve Tolson, Frederick Kelly, Saeed Kezrai, John Grace, Matt Irby, and Fred Kelly. And then several other interested parties, including Janet Gingold, Maureen Fine, Joyce Dowling, Vontasha Sims, Henry Cole, Molly Sherman, Jim Lawson, Alvita Addison, Maurice Chan, Ruth Alice White, Joseph Jakuda, Anthony Field, Jana Parker, and Bonnie Bick.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. As the Secretary mentioned, this is an item that is coming back before us. We last heard it at the November 4th administrative meeting. By way of background, on September 14, 2020, Mattawoman Energy LLC requested of this commission an amendment to its previously granted CPCN from 2015. And the reason for that amendment was to fill a condition with the CPCN requiring the company to evaluate the impacts of dewatering trenches for the construction of a 7.3-mile pipeline to bring natural gas to the proposed power plant. At the November 4th meeting, we heard from the various parties as well as 17 members of the public. At the very end of that meeting, we learned of a report that was commissioned by Clean Air Prince George's and prepared by the Downstream Strategies firm. As an accommodation to Clean Air Prince George's, the commission continued this matter for more than a month to allow both the commissioners an opportunity to thoroughly review the Downstream Strategies report. But the commission also invited both the project developer and the relevant state agencies to file a response if they wished to the Downstream Strategies report. Both the state agencies and the developer took the commission up on that opportunity and filed responses on on December 4th, 2020. The focus of any argument before the commission today has been further narrowed since our meeting on November 4th. And those arguments will be limited with respect to the contents of the Downstream Strategies report and the responsive pleadings. Today is not the time or place to express general opposition to the proposed power project. We're simply going to be discussing the Downstream Strategies report as well as the responses to that report. We'll begin today by hearing from interested members of the public, as well as those representing community action organizations. Because of the large number of people that wish to speak today, I will limit the public comment to 3 minutes. And I have a list before me of persons that wish to speak today. I'll run through that list in the order in which those requests were received. We'll begin with receiving public comment from Ms. Janet Gingold of the Prince George's Sierra Club. Good morning, Ms. Gingold.
Hello, my name is Janet Gingold, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Prince George's County Sierra Club regarding case number 9330. We ask you not to authorize dewatering for construction of a pipeline to convey natural gas to the planned Mattawoman Energy Power Plant in Brandywine. We ask that because of the complexity of the issue, we need more time to consider the PPRP response and consult with experts. We've only had one business day between the release of the PPRP statement and the written deadline for written comments. I remain concerned about an aspect of the dewatering process that does not seem to be adequately addressed in the PPRP letter, namely the potential for adverse effects on water quality downstream in the Zekiah Swamp and Mattawoman Creek. Both of these watersheds are singled out in the Prince George's County Green Infrastructure Plan as special conservation areas, which should be carefully considered when land development proposals are reviewed in the vicinity to ensure their ecological functions are protected or restored and that critical ecological connections are established and or maintained. The dewatering process described in the request for authorization will involve rapid replacement of filtered water, which was removed from the construction area into nearby swales and drainage ditches. Swales and drainage ditches tend to collect settled contaminants, especially along roadways and in areas where there is air and water pollution. Large volumes of water pumped onto such surfaces would mobilize the settled contaminants, potentially carrying them along through surface waters into the sensitive habitats of Zekiah Swamp and Mattawoman Creek, and also potentially carrying them into the groundwater. especially because of the known proximity to Joint Base Andrews Superfund site and the Brandywine coal ash landfill. Airborne particulate pollution could have settled in the swales and ditches near the proposed dewatering. The PPRP response cites a letter from the Department of the Air Force Legal Operations Agency with a map showing chlorinated solvent plumes to the west. The letter states that based on these maps, the area of predicted drawdown is more than 2,000 feet from the nearest edge of the contaminant plume and will not impact the remediation efforts. This addresses the effects of dewatering on the operations of the Superfund site, but not the effects of the Superfund site on the potential impact of dewatering. Filtering the water and returning it to the same watershed are indeed important, but those measures do not protect the area from what happens when rapid flow, turbulence, and erosion mobilize soil contaminants. Without knowing what's in those swales and ditches, we can't know what will be washed downstream. There are many more unanswered questions. Please, at the very least, delay this decision to allow the public to adequately evaluate the PPR response. And please use all the tools at your disposal to facilitate a just transition to clean, renewable energy for Prince George's County. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gingold. We'll now hear from Mr. Brandon Upchurch. And Ms. Gingold, if you could please mute your microphone. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Ian Shavitz for the developer. Mr. Upchurch is with the developer.
Sorry, that was my mistake.
Okay.
We'll move to Ms. Maureen Fine.
I'm Maureen Fine, representing the Greenbelt Climate Action Network, and we urge the PSC to postpone further consideration of Panda Mattawoman Energy's amendment in order to allow a review and response from downstream strategies as requested by Dr. Henry Cole, and to address concerns about inadvertent spills of drilling mud in Cedarville State Forest. In my written comments, I included a link to an eye-opening interactive video titled "The Lessons of Mariner East 2, Pennsylvania Regulators Braced for Water Woes and Complaints, but they didn't expect all those spills." What I learned about HDD is that according to an Illinois nonprofit, Gas Technology, spills of drilling mud occur 50% of the time. Eric Scomberg, president of Texas-based Trenchless Engineering Corporation, said it's known in the industry that if you asked a contractor, they would say spills occur probably 50% of the time, whereas pipeline owners would say spills only happen 10% of the time. Since spills of drilling fluids containing bentonite clay are normal, steps must be taken to protect the environment. Bentonite can hurt aquatic life. It's not harmless, as was stated during our last meeting. It's harmless to humans, maybe. Impairing the aquatic life, their ability to find prey due to increased turbidity and drilling fluids may bury and kill eggs on the bottom. The material safety data sheet on bentonite states 10,000 parts per million causes acute fish toxicity. Bentonite may play a role in disrupting the underground cracks and conduits that allow water to flow through the aquifer. If using a lot of bentonite, you could completely block the flow of groundwater. Do MDE and Mattawoman Energy have a contingency plan for when a spill occurs and for restoration after a spill? On the MDE website, there's a copy of Columbia Pipeline Group HDD contingency plan that calls for having all response equipment and materials required for containment and remediation stored within the drilling sites. Pennsylvania regulators were taken by surprise regarding the hundreds of Sunoco drilling mud spills. Do Maryland's regulators want to be surprised? Those of us who treasure our sensitive natural areas do not. There's a rating system of risk levels for HDD projects based on the presence of gravel, which is very much present at Cedarville, and other geological complexities. What risk level, if any, are the wetlands at Cedarville? During the pullback phase of installation, HDD crews must work day and night up to 40 hours at a time. The light and noise pollution added to the air and water pollution and the compromised water flow patterns caused by excavation, compaction, and disturbance of soil substrates are really too much to take. What this project demonstrates, loud and clear, is that our state environmental protections are lax and full of loopholes, and that the fight to stop dirty energy and a worsening climate crisis needs to continue full force. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fine. We did receive your comments. I neglected to mention we also received Ms. Gingold's comments on behalf of the Sierra Club of Prince George's, as well as about another dozen comments that were filed in advance of today's meeting. We'll next hear from Ms. Joyce Dowling.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak this morning. I realize the scope of this is very small in your view of things. As a resident of Brandywine, where the pollution is already very bad and we have environmentally sensitive flora and fauna, it doesn't seem small to me and others in my community. I realize there are speakers today with more knowledge and experience than I have on these matters, but I'd like to make these main points. We have not had enough time to consult with experts on this important matter and would like more time, at least 45 days. Horizontal direction drilling has been seen to be potentially devastating to homes and the environment. The Mattawoman Creek, the Fitch Hatchery, the Cedarville Trailer Park, where residents don't even know about this and they use well water, and other nearby residents' homes and environments could possibly experience disastrous loss, as Maureen Fine has mentioned. Mattawoman Energy already has created an accident where they laid a water pipe in front of the high school just down the road from me. And I heard it close down the high school for a time. And I believe the situation is known as leaving a stranded asset. Please let's make sure that all the proper precautions are taken. The amendment is because they want to exceed COMAR. So it seems as though the limits are there for a good reason. I would hope you'd take it very seriously and not just give it an approval out of hand. Please remember your vision, which includes to make sure the public is informed and to develop and promote activities that encourage public trust and confidence and serve the public interest through a commitment to professionalism, diversity, mutual respect, and ethical conduct. Now is the time we need it most. This is the height of environmental justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dowling, for seeking out our vision statement and for your pre-filed comments that you filed on the 7th. We'll next hear from Ms. Von Tasha Sims.
Yes, hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes, good morning.
Ms. Sims, you may proceed if you could hear me.
Oh, yes, I can hear you now, thank you. Yes, hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Von Sims. I'm a resident of Charles County, Maryland. All of my family actually lives in Prince George's County. My father's family is actually from the Brandywine area. So this is a very, once again, I just say that I issue myself with my own work group and also several different organizations that I'm a member of. I don't want to go down the entire list right now, but a lot of them. Charles County has been fine. I'm just concerned. Hello? Yes. Hello?
Sorry, your audio was beginning to degrade, but with your video off, I think we'll be in better shape. So please proceed.
Yes, sir. I just want to know, on behalf of the residents here in Charles County, I want to know what information has been relayed to the residents here in Charles County, what professionals, what elected officials, what health professionals have been informed here in Charles County. When it comes to the downstream strategies report, I found that, first of all, Charles County, we was not even supplied with the report, nor were we informed about the 160-page whatever report that Madam Woman had put out. We have been left out of the picture in a very big way in this entire situation here. We want to have a representative here from Charles County on behalf of Charles County. We want to have our own studies done here because we are actually downstream from Brandywine. We are actually the ones who should actually be informed when it comes to the downstream strategies report, because we are not getting that information. We want to know how it's affecting our environment, how it's affecting our community. And when it comes to the Zakiah Swamp and to the Madwoman Creek, my nonprofit, Jair's work group, are actually the stewards of Zakiah Swamp. We're actually the stewards of the Madwoman Creek. We need the proper time to get in there, to do the research, to find out if any endangered species in which we know exist there in that area have been harmed. We need the time to get in there to actually get those cumulative impact studies in which the downstream strategy report was not able to determine that Madwoman Energy had actually done an accurate assessment of the cumulative impact. Of what the impact would be to Zakiah Swamp, to Madwoman Creek, the public safe and healthy impact on that community. We are very concerned about these issues. We're very concerned about the Public Service Commission not properly informing, not properly protecting our community. That you're actually being fueled by taxpayer dollars. So we are going to hold not only you accountable, but we are going to hold big polluters accountable, government agencies accountable, because it's your job, it's your responsibility to make sure that the public is protected. It is your job to make sure that these polluters are regulated properly and they are actually accountable for what they're doing in our community, to our communities. We are not in a position in which we want to continue to go in fossil fuels or into natural gas. Maryland is in a position to be transitioning into renewable energies, zero carbon. We are working on legislation presently at this time to hold these people accountable for what they are doing in our community. They're continuing to do it in our community. And we will continue to fight. We will continue to be on the front lines of this issue. And we want to be included when it comes to the importance of what's going on in our community and with our citizens. Once again, here in Charles County, we're shutting down our fossil fuel plants, the big beast on the Potomac. We're shutting down Morgantown power plant. So I don't understand why this commission would even allow another plant to be built right over top of Charles County residents, and once again, in the Brandywine community. So I thank you for your time. You have a great day.
Thank you, Ms. Sims. We'll next turn to Ms. Molly Sherman.
Hi, I just wanted to thank all the other people that have spoken before me about this issue. I think the biggest thing that we're noticing is that while we're working on all these changes to go to zero waste, to look at renewable energy, as we're exploring this one, it's a contradicting issue because this isn't just the future of other polluters, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that's going to discourage zero waste options and discourage looking at alternative energy. And as we're seeing the consequences of the pollution on these communities,
She needs to speak up. I'm not picking her up.
Ms. Sherman?
Yes?
We are experiencing interference with your microphone and we can't hear you.
Okay, let me try and find, can you hear me better now?
Yes, but there's some electronic interference. Oh, it just turned off.
Okay, is this better?
Yeah, if you could speak up louder.
Okay, thank you. As I was saying, I think we're seeing as other communities are turning to options that are going towards zero waste and other forms of renewable energy, it doesn't make sense to pursue an option that is antiquated in how it deals with our waste and looks at renewable energy, because this isn't just the future of more air polluters, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that discourages these other pursuits. And when we have all the knowledge of how this is affecting our communities, it seems to be championing a certain level of scientific illiteracy to go forward in having these huge polluters. And I think we'll continue to hear that it's disproportionately affecting communities that now more than ever need us to speak up. And when we have options that are on the rise and people working on the legislation that will put forth better opportunities and better ways to manage our waste and to address energy, I think it's nearsighted to go with this proposal that's just antiquated. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sherman. We'll next turn to Mr. James Lawson.
My name is James Lawson. I live in Accokeek, Maryland. I live in the Mattawoman watershed. The proposed power plant is in the headwaters of Mattawoman Creek. Mattawoman Creek has reached its tipping point for irreversible degradation from the cumulative effect of development. The dewatering process required to construct the pipeline should take into consideration the impact on water quality in Mattawoman Creek. I represent the Southern Maryland First Guys Coalition. I am one of the thousands of citizens who have joined Clean Air Prince George's to oppose construction and operation of another fossil fuel project in Brandywine. The fracked gas pipeline is detrimental to precious natural and recreation areas and a threat to public safety. Panda Mattawoman's latest amendment deals with constructing the fracked gas pipeline that will run more than 7 miles north through Charles and Prince George County to deliver gas from an existing pipeline. I live 8 miles from the power plant, and the air quality where I live is affected by the concentration of power plants. The power plants are located near a large minority population. Most homeowners purchase their homes without knowing of the existing power plant or knowledge of the new power plants. In a few years, it is likely a cluster of respiratory diseases will show up in these communities. The media will begin to publish articles on how the government approved the polluting power plants. Most of the politicians and appointed public servants will pretend they had nothing to do with this environmental injustice. Again, I ask you, our representatives to the Maryland Public Service Commission, to rescind authorization for an amendment requested by Mattawoman Energy Creek allowing dewatering to construct its natural gas pipeline. Thank you, James Lawson, Southern Maryland First Guys Coalition.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson. We'll now hear from Ms. Alveda Addison.
Thank you. I agree with the speakers before me. I've attended several hearings about the power plants, and I find it unacceptable that some government officials are ignoring the science. It is well documented that fossil fuel creates pollution, which causes health hazards and which leads to destructive weather events causing death and massive property damage and loss in the billions of dollars. It is especially frustrating that we have healthier alternatives and there is not more use wind and solar power. It seems that either someone is getting some benefit from the polluters, or someone does not care about the fallout, or someone wants people to suffer at the expense of making the rich richer. History tells us that there have been various strategies employed to hinder the progress of the masses, especially in the minority communities. So in the eras of Black Lives Matter, people who support polluters are intentionally or unintentionally creating situations that lead to health issues, which lead to premature deaths in minority communities in order to continue to oppress us. And we are just not, period. For these reasons, as a citizen of Prince George's County, Maryland, I am asking our representatives to vote against all fossil fuel projects. Request proposals for alternative clean energy like solar and wind energy. Thank you for allowing me to testify.
Thank you, Ms. Edison. We'll now hear from Ms. Maurice Chen.
Oh, hi. Hi, my apologies. Sorry. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We don't see.
Okay. All right. So thank you for giving me a chance to speak my testimony. So I get it. Big change is not easy. Big change is difficult. However, big change is necessary. For many years, we have ignored science and data on impact of climate change to our health. For many years, Blacks or African Americans have been disproportionately affected with chronic diseases such as asthma, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes. I am a nurse with a specialty in informatics and data. For many years, science has labeled Blacks as susceptible to this chronic disease because of their race. Recent data reveals that socioeconomic and environmental factors play a major role with this chronic disease. Brandywine consists of 70% Blacks or African American population. 1 mile from the power plant is an elementary school. It is not surprising that you choose this area for your power plant. In 2009, Maryland adopted the Gas Emissions Reduction Act, amended in 2016. The goal is to achieve reduction of emissions by 2030. In 2019, Clean Energy Jobs Act was passed with a goal to reach 100% renewable by 2040 and increase funding for clean energy workforce. So now we are adding a new power plant. I began my statement earlier saying big change is difficult, but really it is not difficult. We make it difficult. The idea of change is that we recognize that there is a need and we have a vision, a goal, and then we make our actions towards achieving this goal. We cannot achieve our goals with adding a new power plant. Big change is necessary. Enough is enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chen. We'll now hear from Ms. Ruth Alice White.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to say a few words, and I will be brief. I'm from Howard County Climate Action, a group with 1,400 supporters in our area. We are a part of the international organization 350.org, a major climate organization, and we are here to support our sister organization, Greenbelt Climate Action. You've already heard from Maureen Fine, and I endorse what she said. And also want to support the testimony of the Prince George's Sierra Club and the speaker Joyce Dowling, and also the written testimony from Henry Cole of Clean Air Prince George's. We just want to emphasize that the report, the response to the downstream strategies report from DNR, MD, and the developers was not made available until Friday. And this has not given Clean Air Prince George's time to consult its expert downstream strategies about the response. And we suggest and support delaying the decision for at least a month, at least until January, to give time for a response. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. White. We'll now hear from Joseph Jakuda.
Good morning, Chairman Stanek and Commissioners Richard O'Donnell, Linton, and Herman. This is, of course, regarding case 9330. My name is Joseph Jakuda, and I'm the lead volunteer of the Climate Parents of Prince George's County campaign. I'm testifying today with great concern about the changes to the methane pipeline that Mattawaman Energy Center LLC is seeking an amendment for. We submitted a letter on October 12th noting the lack of consideration in the amendment for the effect of air toxic emissions on nearby people, in particular those in attendance at the school nearby the proposed project. This issue appears to have never been addressed in Mattawaman Energy Centers LLC in the original amendment nor subsequent documentation. I'm bringing it up today since it does not appear to have been addressed either at the November 4th meeting Chairman Stanek mentioned earlier. And it's my understanding that since this pipeline involved the relocation of the original planned pipeline, these impacts should be considered. Methane transporting pipelines can result in the emission of volatile organic compounds, in particular known carcinogens known as benzene. Studies have shown that these air toxics can travel distances beyond 1 kilometer and can impact the long-term health of students and others that live so close to the proposed pipeline. Several studies over the past few years, such as those from California Air Resources Board and Houston Advanced Research Center, have independently shown benzene fugitive emissions along methane pipelines of all ages. Other studies, such as one this year by Zachary Weller et al. In Environmental Sciences and Technology, have shown that leak rates from methane pipelines can be twice as high as currently estimated by EPA. Much of this research is new, so we would not have expected the PSC to consider these factors 5 years ago, but now these issues are becoming common knowledge and can no longer be ignored. This is particularly concerning given the proximity of the proposed terminus to Brandywine Elementary School, in particular that Winton Park Middle and High Schools are also in the vicinity. The end of these proposed pipelines is less than 1 kilometer from the playgrounds at Brandywine Elementary School. The population of the school is nearly 95% people of color, and environmental justice concerns need to be given the highest priority in regards to the impact that this proposed pipeline will have on the well-being of those in the educational environment at Brandywine Elementary, as well as other people living nearby. At this point, it's not appropriate to approve the amendment without an evaluation of the impact of air toxics emissions on nearby communities. Doing so aligns with the mission of the PC, including to act in the public interest for the safety of the public, for the conservation environment, specifically clean air, and to encourage public trust and confidence. We are also supportive of the actions called upon by Clean Air Prince George's to provide more time for analysis of the dewatering as well. And I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll now hear from Mr. Anthony Field. We'll move on to Ms. Jana Parker. We'll move on to Ms. Bonnie Bick.
Hello, can you hear me?
We could hear you, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Bonnie Bick. I'm representing the Chapman Forest Foundation. I'm here to ask the Public Service Commission to stand up for the people of Maryland. We want to be a state that believes in science. And this delay in 5 years ago, it may have been less, may have been less awareness about the climate crisis, but now we're in a situation where the Public Service Commission is actually voting on whether or not you believe in the science that tells us that we are beyond our comfort zone when it comes to the climate. We ask for further time to review the Public Service Commission response to the downstream strategy report. We need at least 45 days because of the holiday in between. And the citizens only had a very short time to review. And the Public Service Commission, with all of your staff, had almost a month to review. And so we just got your response, and we need time to respond to that. And I would like to address the discussion before this project came up on your agenda. And there was a big discussion about the fact that basically the Public Service Commission representative said that 3 years in the fossil fuel industry is a huge amount of time. And I would contend that 5 years ago, when you approved this project, there were many circumstances, including the social justice awareness and the climate awareness, and now even additional awareness about the fragile watersheds, Mattawoman and Zakiah. I'd like to ask that because of this environmental justice issue in Brandywine, that a socioeconomic justification study be done. I'd also like to request that we have the right to have a MDE permit regarding the dewatering process. The COMAR states COMAR 26.17.06.03. That's 27.17.06.03B. 3 states that if a project, a dewatering project, has under 10,000 gallons of water per day drilled and 30 days of dewatering, that they are exempt from a MDE public hearing. But the records show that there are 40 days for dewatering of this, for this pipeline, and over 10,000 gallons a day. So I'm very concerned about the quality of the water as stated by other testifiers. And I'd also like to put on the record, and I don't know if it is on the record because I tried to put something on the record yesterday, and I'm not sure whether it was. I did get an announcement that I had succeeded, but I was 2 minutes late because of the difficulty that I had in putting this on the record. But I put on the record a case for the protection of the watershed resources of Mattawoman Creek. This was an interagency task force that tells us that Mattawoman is on the tipping point, and therefore we need to make special accommodations when making any decisions regarding the water quality of Mattawoman Creek. And I hope that you have that document and can review it before you make any decisions regarding this, what I call a significant change in the pipeline process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bick. Before I recognize Dr. Henry Cole, I've reached the end of my list for general comments from the public and community organizations. Are there any other persons in this meeting that wish to make a comment before we recognize Dr. Cole?
Hello, my name is Joanne Flynn. I sent my name in yesterday, but haven't received a reply. But I'd like to speak.
All right, Ms. Flynn, you missed the deadline, but you are here, so please just state and spell your name for the record, and then proceed with your comments.
Thank you. Joanne Flynn, Joanne, and last name Flynn, F as in Frank, Lynn. I'm from Brandywine, Maryland, and have been involved in Clean Air Prince George's, the Brandywine Revitalization Plan, and several years of basically trying to understand the process and fighting too many power plants in our community. I just want to mention that I'd like to support what the citizens have said. I think that it's been excellent testimony, and I couldn't have said it any better. But I also would like to request an extension of time, at least the 45 days extension. I'd be interested in having a public hearing with the MDE, as Ms. Bick mentioned, that it's been triggered by the amount of water that'll be used in the dewatering process and the length of time. I wanted to add some kind of particulars to the dewatering process itself. There's a bog, a little known bog, the Brandywine Mattawoman bog, that's located at the eastern edge of the Mattawoman Energy property. One of the first sections of the pipeline construction would be along the edge of this bog. The bog property was recently donated to Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission and has not been well documented. I mean, it came to our knowledge after the Public Service Commission issued the PCCN, and I think that this should be analyzed and addressed in the report for the impacts on that bog. Also, I support the looking into the unintended consequences of horizontal directional drilling as expressed by Ms. Maureen. And what is the plan for emergency response and remediation if there should be what's called a blowout from the use of the pressurized drilling technique? Also, recently, the Keys Energy Pipeline was installed a couple years back, and its route basically runs parallel in quite a bit of the route to this planned pipeline route, but its location is not designated on maps, or I don't hear any talk of it, but it seems like some precautions should be taken in the installation of another pipeline in close proximity to this existing pipeline. And all along, we've been concerned about the cumulative impacts of so many power plants. And now it seems like the cumulative impact of this second pipeline should be addressed. And the first pipeline ought to at least be designated, but the cumulative impacts to the health, safety, and welfare of people in the watersheds and natural areas and existing infrastructure should be taken into account now that this second pipeline is being considered. And also, I would like the commission to consider the history of the non-diligence of Mattawoman Energy, from the poor choice of locating a power plant in a residential community in the heart of the village of Brandywine, to the overall lack of notification and their having not met the CPCN permit timelines, and giving no assurance or evidence of adequate funding for their power plant project, so that the community, the county, the state will not be stuck with stranded assets, or that this process just goes on forever, and all they're doing is stranding assets. But this is evidenced by the construction of the first mile of Mattawoman Energy's water pipeline, which was mentioned by Ms. Dowling. It's now obsolete. It's there. And yeah, the construction of that pipeline did hit a gas line did hit and break a gas line, causing temporary closure of Gwen Park High School. The Mattawoman Energy Project just poses threat to considerable impacts on our air, water, land, roads, school, and the village of Brandywine and other existing and built resources, while having the community living in this limbo under the constant threat of yet an unneeded, unwanted power plant. And for how many more years? I mean, too much time has passed, circumstances have changed, and more has been revealed through this virtually unknown and unsatisfactory power plant approval process. This amendment should trigger a review of the entire project through a new CPCN permit, not just a narrow view of additional dewatering. Anyway, thank you for your consideration and letting us speak.
Thank you, Ms. Flynn, for your testimony. Are there other members of the public that wish to speak? I'd now like to recognize Dr. Henry Cole, who is with the Clean Air Prince George's and sponsored the Downstream Strategies report that was filed on or about November 1st. Dr. Cole, good morning.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My name is Dr. Henry Cole. I'd like to start with thanking Chairman Stanek and the commission and the staff. I think you guys have gone out of your way to take our comments and allow us additional time, help us squeak in under the deadlines. Your staff has been very, very helpful. So let me start with that. I'm going to cut my comments a bit short because a a lot of people have talked about why we would like a 45-day extension to review the PPRP and agency response to the downstream studies report. But I'd like to focus on a few things that have to do with the construction process itself. First, we don't have assurance that all of those who reside in close proximity to the pipeline route have received notification and have had a chance to raise concerns and ask questions. This opportunity must be given not only to property owners, but to all residents, regardless of the legality. It is a moral issue to let people know if something is going to be happening in their neighborhood that creates disruption, that has some risks associated with it, et cetera. And I'm particularly concerned about the case of the Cedarville Mobile Home Park, which lies immediately adjacent to the pipeline route and also to the Cedarville State Forest, which a lot of people use. And that area is will be constructed using the horizontal directed drilling, which Maureen Fine talked about. So we're particularly concerned with these trailer home residents who may not have even been notified. There's going to be a lot of noise, disruption. I don't know the traffic routes by which all the equipment will be brought in, but those people who live there, whether or not they own their property, the land, have a right to know what's going to happen and have a right to be involved in asking for protection. But this brings up some other construction-related processes and problems, which have not been adequately addressed. And I know this may go beyond what Chairman Stanek said this session was about, but I beg your forbearance. One thing that's not been considered fully is if this power plant is actually built, the construction period will be about 2 to 3 years. That will result in a lot of traffic congestion, which has been acknowledged by PPRP in its environmental report, July 2015. But one thing that they did not do was look at the air quality impact of several years of congested traffic associated with workers commuting to and from, and diesel trucks bringing equipment and materials to the site. All of those result in air pollution. For example, the Brandywine Elementary School is located directly along that transportation route, Brandywine Road. That imposes both safety and air quality and health issues to those people, those children who are particularly sensitive to added air pollution. Diesel exhausts are carcinogenic. None of the air quality impacts were considered by PPRP. They declined to do so. So that's a missing piece. I want to say one more thing. I'm not a lawyer, but the certificate of public necessity and convenience specifically stated that construction on this project should start Immediately, expeditiously, continuously. That site lies vacant. The site lies vacant. What happened? Why has that CPC yet not been rescinded? All of these issues are relevant to that question, and that question is relevant to these issues. The commission, I think, to preserve its integrity, has to look at that issue immediately. That site lies vacant. There is no construction, has not been any for 5 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Cole. At this point, before we turn to hear from the state agencies and the developer, we'll take a brief recess until 11:25 this morning, at which time we'll hear from the state agencies, including the Department of Natural Resources, Commission staff, Office of People's Counsel, if those agencies have comments to provide. And then we'll hear from the Mattawoman developer. So we are in recess until 11:25.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are back on the record for this administrative item in case number 9330. At this time, we will hear from various state agencies that wish to provide comment with respect to the CPCN request modification. We'll begin by calling on the state agencies, the technical state agencies, including the Department of Natural Resources Power Plant Research Program and the Maryland Department of the Environment's Water and Science Administration.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Again, Steve Tolson, representing the DNR's Power Plant Research Program. As the Commission is aware, on December the 4th, DNR and MDE filed a joint letter under mail log number 232832, responding to the points that were raised in the downstream report, and also providing a revised recommended licensing condition in which condition Q1 subparagraph E, as in echo, was added as a result of some of the comments made in the downstream report. And that condition essentially deals with the return of pumped water to the drawdown area. I have Fred Kelly of DNR PPRP on the call with me today, and his contractor, Matt Irby of ERM. And my understanding is we also have John Grace of MDE and Syed Kazrai of MDE, who would be available to respond to any questions that the Commission may have.
Thank you, Mr. Tolson. I'll next see if Maryland Office of People's Counsel wish to provide any comments for the Commission's consideration.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Philip Sheehan for the Office of People's Counsel. OPC has no comments to add at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. I'll next turn to Counsel for the Commission, the Public Service Commission.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. James Greger on behalf of staff. Staff has nothing additional from our comments that were filed for the November 4th administrative meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Greger. I'll next recognize Counsel for the developer, Mattawoman Energy, LLC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. I'll be very brief. We filed our response, per the Commission's instructions. I think it is clear from our response to the Downstream Strategies report, all of the issues that are within the scope of the current request have been addressed between the Tri-Hydro report, as well as conditions and portions of the approval associated with the Maryland state permit, as well as the Corps of Engineers permit for wetlands and waterways. Another point that we wanted to make is many of the items that were addressed in the Downstream Strategies report and have been addressed today in members of the public's comments are very good points with respect to things like erosion, sediment control, et cetera. I wanted to confirm for the Commission, as the state stated in their letter, that prior to any dewatering construction, final construction plans, a sediment and erosion control plan, as well as stormwater management plan will be prepared and filed for approval with the county. So that will address, many of the issues that were brought up in today's comments. And finally, just a couple points to respond and clarify for the Commission on issues that were raised today. In terms of returning water after it is withdrawn, we obviously saw the state's proposed new condition, and we would support that, do not oppose that in any way. Water that is released back will be in a measured way. It will not be as if all of the water will just be, the spigot will be turned on and water will flow. It will be both filtered and it will be restrained in such a way that it flows back in a slow manner per best management practices. In terms of the horizontal directional drilling, there were questions asked regarding a contingency plan and mitigation. Absolutely, that is a requirement that Mattawoman has of its pipeline contractors, and there will be such a contingency plan and mitigation in effect that meets all of those requirements associated with the horizontal directional drilling, as well as the locations for the directional drilling were coordinated very closely with the state agencies in terms of location, in terms of depth, and in terms of what needs to be done at the entry and exit points in order to minimize any sort of spill or blowback. And then finally, just to confirm, the location of the natural gas pipeline has not changed. It's the same location that it has always been and was approved in the CPCN that the commission issued. I have with me Brandon Upchurch from Mattawoman for any questions the commission may have, as well as Brad Pekas with Tri-Hydro, who did the engineering work and the report that accompanied our request. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shavitz. At this time, the commissioners will ask questions of the parties that presented today. Mr. Shavitz, I'll begin with some questions for you. We've heard a lot of impassioned remarks today, concerns with the project, with the delay of the development of the project. We just heard from Dr. Cole regarding concerns that nearby residents and the community have been effectively waiting in limbo over the past 5 years since the commission granted the CPCN in November of 2015. Can you provide the commission with any response to the reasons for the continued delay?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I will actually defer to Mr. Upchurch, who can address the construction status.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you stated, we did receive our CPCN on November 13th of 2015. Since then, we commenced construction in August of 2016 when we executed contracts with our EPC contractors, which is Bechtel and Siemens, for all of the plant's equipment, included but not limited to the turbines, generators, heat recovery steam generators, which are known as HRSGs, and associated accessories. These contracts have been uninterrupted and remain in place today. We've continued construction activities and fabrication of site-specific equipment with these vendors. We've also installed erosion and sediment controls and performed soil scraping and stockpiling, as well as constructing internal roadways, laydown area, etc. We continue to work with these folks, as well as doing or executing items to optimize the project. This includes, working with the commission on the approval for the CPC amendment for switching from wet cooled to air cooled facility that was approved in August of 2019. Currently, we are also working with PEPCO and PJM on our interconnection agreement on the transmission side for the transmission lines. They are updating that cost and schedule as we speak, and we expect to have that by year end. We continue to work on all matters related to the project, and really the main item holding anything up right now is that final schedule from PJM and PEPCO. Please let me know if that helps to answer your question, and happy to answer any more.
Thank you. The commission recognizes that it's not a simple undertaking to develop a new power station and connecting it both to the natural gas interstate system as well as the PJM grid. However, when the commission confers a CPCN and provides the holder with a right, there's obviously a responsibility for the holder of that CPCN to move with all due speed to complete the project. We heard from Ms. Maureen Fine earlier today with the Greenbelt Climate Action Network. Mr. Shavitz, you may have touched on this just a bit. She had a concern with some of the horizontal directional drilling and these contingency plans in the event that there is a spill. Did you just state that the developer has a contingency plan in place if there is a spill?
Mr. Chairman, what I stated is at the time that construction will begin, there will be that plan in place. That's a plan that is put together and and provided by the pipeline contractor. So once that pipeline contractor is retained and is ready to begin that work, it's a requirement of Mattawoman that their pipeline contractors have those contingency plans in place and approved prior to any horizontal directional drilling.
Thank you. This question is for Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kelly, if you're with us today.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, good morning. So we heard from a number of interested persons today, in addition to comments that were recently filed with the commission regarding time of year restrictions on limiting the drawdown to or restricting the drawdown during certain perhaps spawning season for species of aquatic life and certain types of fish that were mentioned. Are we clear that those time restrictions overlap with either the mating season or the potential time of year when these amphibious species are active and would be most impacted by any drawdown?
So I think the wetlands permit that was issued for this project covers that time of year restriction for use one waters, and that is a restriction on in-stream work. So to the extent that the wetlands surrounding a stream, it wouldn't be covered in those areas. But in this case here, we're talking about construction dewatering in that it's limited. The level of the water will decrease the amount that it'll draw down. That'll drop off rapidly as you expend out from the trench that you're dewatering. So the wetlands closer to probably would suffer some loss of water on a short-term duration, temporary, but other surrounding wetlands further afield, they would be unaffected. And as we indicated, this would be a short-term in the areas as it moves along the construction pathway. So we believe that these impacts will be temporary.
And the restriction period, if I'm correct, that's March 1st through June 15th?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Let me open it up to my fellow commissioners to see if they have questions of the developer or the state agencies. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm wondering if somebody could, maybe MDE, hopefully, explain the new conditions for those who are listening or maybe watching on live stream who have not had the opportunity to read that. Could you tell us what those additional condition and what the additional condition entails?
Yeah, this is Fred Kelly again. The new condition was just in recognition that the pathway of the water pipeline is in an area of headwater streams for Zakaya Swamp, Mattawoman. These are first order streams or headwater streams. And so depending upon where you pump the water and where you redirect it to, it could make a difference. So in terms of getting at potential avoiding cumulative impacts, we would want the water that is in the system that is being dewatered to remain in that system. So in effect, if you're removing water from a wetland around a stream course, it's getting returned back into that system. So further downstream, there would be no impacts or minimize those impacts.
Mr. Tolson, is that the condition you referred to?
No, the condition I referred to is Q1E, which was the return of the pumped water to the area from which it was drawn.
So that's in effect, that's what I was speaking to. As you're
Okay.
dewatering, you want to return that water into the system. So
Okay.
yeah.
You didn't say which paragraph. I wanted to make sure we were on the same page. It's Q1E.
Could some representative from the Maryland Department of the Environment speak to this and give me your assessment of this new condition?
Good morning, Commissioner. This is John Grace.
Good morning.
So the purpose of the condition was to prevent cumulative negative impacts by returning the water to the same system from which it was withdrawn, as Fred said. We've used this kind of condition previously in other permits where we thought that was important.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm asking you to give us some input on the efficacy of this new condition to protect the environment. You're the Maryland Department of the Environment, and I want you to say something more than I agree with what Fred said, if you would, please.
So if the water is withdrawn from a particular watershed, the requirement is simply to return that water back to that same watershed from which it was withdrawn. So we're seeking water balance within that watershed of withdrawal. And therefore, the water that's been removed is returned and is no longer, the effect of that withdrawal is mitigated.
Yeah, I keep hearing the same things. I think what I'm really looking for is for someone to explain how this new condition is responsive to the downstream report, and I'm not hearing it.
What they had claimed was that the withdrawal was going to have a negative consequence on downstream flow and habitat. So this eliminates that.
All right, very good. And Mr. Greger, does staff agree with and recommend approval of this new condition?
We do, Commissioner, yes.
Very good. I just wanted to have that on the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank everyone for all their testimony and their involvement this morning. This is, I think, mostly for PPRP and MDE. I just wanted to start with just asking a little bit about your submission here, and it looks like a lot of the research that has been done to date was for the waterways permit application, and that was for August 8th, 2016. I want to find out, has there been anything else really that the either PPRP or MDE has done as far as just research and analysis of this particular area since 2016? Or is pretty much all the response to the downstream report based on what was done in 2016?
So this is Fred Kelly with PPRP. I would say that we did review the technical report prepared by Mattawoman as a prelude to their filing for this amendment for request. But in terms of technical information, ecological information associated with the natural gas pipeline route, back when we reviewed this project in 2015, we put together a comprehensive project assessment report. I think last meeting I mentioned that was about 100 pages, but it was incorrect. That was a 300-page report. So I think we have, since that time, we have comprehensive information about the site. But building on the information presented in the wetlands permit and then the information provided by Mattawoman, I think we have a good assessment of what the potential impacts are from this proposed project or construction dewatering project involving the installation of this pipeline.
Okay, but you are relying on the company's, I guess, most updated information to supplement your originally done, your own research. Is that what I understand your answer to be?
That's correct. The basis of the technical information of the geological structure, the water resources, that was all put together by Mattawoman, reviewed by PPRP and MDE, and found to be reasonable in their request.
Okay. And this kind of goes to the same question I think it was already asked about, I would call it the shelf life, but when does this CPCN need to be acted on? I mean, we just listened to a discussion on the brick kiln, and they had specifically a 3 to 4 year period to act. or they had to come back for the waiver. I was looking through the conditions. Is there such a time limit on this particular CPCN?
This is Fred Kelly from PPRP again. There was one condition in there related to timing, and it's in the air provisions, and it was subject to MDE's air, I forget the acronym, Air Science Administration, that if it was based on their determination that it hadn't been acted upon the timing within that condition, then they would ask that the CPCN be suspended, or they would make that request. But it fell to MDE Air Administration.
Okay. Is there a reason that solar projects do have a specific, in this case that we dealt with earlier today, 3 to 4 year, but a CPCN for a project like this doesn't seem to have any type of time limit? Is there a reason?
I think it's a matter of fact on the solar projects. When we review those cases, the applicant states that their objective of interconnecting and being operational at such and such time. We just we would, I guess, in support of the commission, we wouldn't want to have CPCNs out there forever. And also, as we heard on that solar case, certainly we're learning more issues with respect to solar as we go along. So we don't like to have CPCNs out there too long, where conditions might change that would affect the recommended conditions that we would include in there. So I guess that could be a basis for why we put a time limit on solar CPCNs.
Okay, but considering this particular area, has PPRP considered a lot? Really, time has not stood still in the last 5 years. There are a number of new homes in this area, commercial developments, this whole Timothy branch. I think they are going to add something like nearly 1,000 new residences right in this area. I mean, does PPRP consider any of these types of changes in the area, particularly when we're looking at an amendment like this one?
So I think in terms of, I raised that question with my point of contact at MDE Air regularly when I discussed with him progress made on the project. But as you heard from Madam Representative Brandon Upchurch, the continuity of actions related to the project, not just the action at the project site, but getting equipment, contracts, and those things, those weigh, I think, on MDE's perception of how the project stands. And but I pretty much leave it to MDE to essentially pull the trigger on that. Anything that's limiting in terms of the project timing.
Okay, you
not
go ahead.
Not meaning to interrupt, but this is John Grace from MDE. I do want to point out that the watering itself has a 2-year initiation of withdrawal. That's our last condition in the recommended conditions.
Okay. Well, and to that point, obviously with all this new development taking place, that's going to change the permeability, the surface of this area. Does that, cause any, I guess, requirement on your part to go back and take a look at, with all this development that may not have been considered 5 years ago, will there be, these new type of cumulative impacts that, are now something that could have the impacts on these wetlands?
So I would say for this project, looking at it narrowly, a 7.3 mile pipeline, it runs through areas that are kind of in the backs of areas like a railroad line. It runs down a Pepco transmission line right of way. So these are, and it's in a headwater area as well. So there's not a lot of cumulative impact from development that these areas face. So I'm confident that what we've reviewed here today would have been the same answer we would have given you 5 years ago had this been put forward in with the review of the entire project.
Okay, well, I'll take your professional response to that. I don't live that far from this area, so there is a lot of these areas are very close together. So that transmission line you're talking about, some of these right-of-ways you're talking about are right up against the development of places like the Timothy Branch. But
Exactly.
I wanted to ask about these, the construction, the permits, the final permits that are needed. And I go to the top of page 2 of your filing. This is prior to the proceeding with construction activities. I don't want to read the whole thing. That's what I'm referring to. Are these final plans, are they going to be reviewed by PPRP specifically with an eye to looking at all the conditions under section E of the permit of the CPCN, the terrestrial and aquatic ecology section?
I'd have to go back. Are you referring to the sediment erosion control plans, all the things that go to the county for their review?
Well, yeah, it's left to the county, and that's what I was trying to understand. What role does the county play in ensuring all the commitments under Section E, and what involvement does PPRP have in assuring that the county and the state are in agreement on meeting those conditions, particularly when we're talking specifically about all these permits, which I think goes to specifically what the downstream strategy report is looking at.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at the original CPCN conditions. Oftentimes we have placeholders in those conditions affecting sediment erosion control, stormwater management, that we get to review those things. But understanding we don't want to get cross-threaded with any local agency, that it is their authority to review these permits under delegated authority from MDE. So we have to give them their due in terms of reviewing and implementing these things. But if you look at the wetland permit that really articulates a lot of this, that spells out monitoring, biological review of streams, oversight during construction. I think the wetlands permit really gets at a lot of the meat of what the folks that pose the downstream strategies report and have issues with this project. It really gets at what they want, and that wetlands permit was issued, I think, back in 2016, and it also had a public hearing at that same time down there in Brandywine. So, a lot of the impacts, a lot of the issues that we've heard today have been addressed in that forum.
Okay, and all these permits, I mean, they haven't been granted yet. Is that correct? Because it says prior to proceeding with construction activities. So that hasn't happened. Have these permits been requested?
I don't believe so, but maybe Madam is best to address that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. They have not yet been provided to the county for approval. These are plans that are made once exact timing and design are finalized, if you will, and at that point, the sediment and erosion control, stormwater management, and construction are submitted to the county. The other thing that I will add to follow up on your question to Mr. Kelly is that all of the various conditions and requirements that were put in the MDE permit, as well as the CPCN that would dictate or address what can and cannot be done with respect to dewatering, those are what form the bases of the plans that ultimately, or they are incorporated into, I should say, the plans that ultimately are submitted to the county. So, so anything that we are required to do per condition of a state permit or the CPCN, become the basis for what is ultimately sought in terms of construction plans and sediment and erosion control and stormwater management with the county.
Okay. Yeah, part of the reason I'm asking PPRP and MDE is because, as far as the public involvement process goes, I just want to be sure that there is coordination between the county permitting process and with the state processes. And as you know, the CPCN conditions, particularly under E, has a very extensive list of issues related to wetlands. And this goes to the concerns, I believe, of the downstream report. And the final on that, I just wanted to ask about this horizontal directional drilling. If, under E6, A, it does talk specifically about directional drilling, but it starts with no disturbance whatsoever shall occur to wetlands of what's that stand for? WSSA, wetlands of special state concern.
Yes, wetlands of special state concern.
Or their 100-foot barriers as determined by MD and Maryland Department of Natural Resources. So to avoid all vegetation removal or disturbance, horizontal drilling, directional drilling shall be used. And I'll stop there. Given now the concerns that are being raised about HDD, how will we meet that very high standard? No disturbance whatsoever shall occur to these wetlands of special state concern.
The reason why we recommended HDD in those areas, in particular around Cedarville and areas where there were significant wetland complexes, is that HDD, it doesn't require the trenching, the actual digging up of the wetlands, so you can go underneath of it and avoid impacts directly to the wetland altogether. Understanding, as was raised as an issue here, HDD, there's a bit of an art to that as well. You don't want to have blowouts, things of that accord, but I think it's fairly well understood. It's pretty well understood. I would call your attention to a major project down there in southern Maryland, the crossing of the Patuxent River. That was a 2-mile HDD crossing from very near the mouth of it. And as long as it's done, attended to detail and implemented correctly, I don't think there are any issues with it. In these cases here, these are shallow spans, so they're not going as deep. But I don't think that the issues related to HDD are that significant here. And furthermore, I guess to be specific on this issue, there is no dewatering required with HDD, unlike open trench and jack and bore.
And Mr. Commissioner, we would be, I'd be happy to have the Mattawoman's hydrologist and engineer give you some more specifics if you would like with respect to what's being done to minimize the chance of any of those such blowouts or spills, if that would be helpful to you and the other members of the commission.
Well, at this stage, I'm trying to determine whether, at least for me, I'm ready to vote on this today. It sounds like there are still some open issues that we're still kind of maybe just pulling, responses, somewhat out of the air rather than really having hard responses to, having real scientific-based responses to. And given this issue that was raised, today, and the filings for today about horizontal directional drilling and the condition requirement E6, my question is really, are we ready to determine and make a decision on this amendment today? That's really where I am at the moment on that. I guess finally, I just wanted to just go to the notification issue for maybe, again, PPRP. Are there any special notification requirements for these type of activities in state parks?
Commissioner, this is John Grace from MDE. And the specific requirements for notification are in the environment article. And last time, November 4th, Commissioner Herman asked about that. And I did not include one reference that I should have included for construction dewatering. So the legislature specifically gave the department the ability to waive public notification requirements of 5 204 for construction dewatering. That's spelled out in 5506 and paragraph E. That I think is the one point we didn't make in November.
Okay. So those of us who use state parks in our area, Rosaryville or Cedarville Forests, or I guess Casa is not, that's county, we would not have been informed then that, by flyer or something on a billboard that this is taking place. Those state residents would not be notified of this type of an activity. Is that the?
I'm talking about the dewatering only. I'm not talking about the wetlands permit or the notification that happened for that.
Okay. And then I guess my last question, just on notifications, there again raised some concerns about environmental justice and whether sufficient number and people were sufficiently notified, but enough of the people impacted were notified. And given that this whole project, prompted a Title VI review of our whole CPCN process. And we did, as a commission, just engage in the rulemaking to augment and improve that process. Are there any concerns or anything that we've done differently this time around as far as notifications to improve upon that process from the original application consideration that precipitated the complaint?
Mr. Commissioner, is that a question for?
Well, actually, yeah, for the company and for PPRP. I mean, have we done a better job this time with notifications?
Well, so I can tell you from the developer's perspective, we did go above and beyond what is required by state law with respect to these notifications. The notifications are required for property owners. They're contiguous to areas where the dewatering would occur, which is only a portion of the pipeline. The developer went further than that and has sent notices to all owners of property contiguous to the entire pipeline route, which, as I said, does go beyond what is required. A potential impact, or what could be potential impact on property owners, as well as those, I guess, residing that don't own property, would be impacts on wells. And we have gone ahead and confirmed that, given the difference in aquifer depth, that no wells that have been registered with the state on the well registry will be impacted in any way. So, as far as based upon our analysis for the dewatering itself, there would be no impacts to any of the residents that are along that route.
Okay.
And this is Fred Kelly from PPRP. My recollection of the discussion and review of the notification, there was a list provided by Madam of the contiguous landowners, as Mr. Shavitz indicated. And also there were also some indication that there were other elected officials or notable county officials that were on that list as well. That to me it sounded like an addition as to what we had done previously, if that speaks to your question about how we did things differently.
Okay. Yeah, the concern I have is, are we doing any better than we did 5 years ago? And are we potentially just subjecting ourselves to, once again, another Title VI complaint? But I guess with that, I really have no more questions. But as I stated a moment ago, my preference is we grant the citizens another 45 days so they do have an opportunity to review the PPRP comments, the company comments, and we don't rush this. The company hasn't really been rushed since 2015 to start construction, so I don't see personally any harm in allowing the citizens a little more time to again digest what they've learned from today and also in the responses from the company and PPRP. So Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I've become very familiar with the pipeline route of late. The CPCN did approve the 7.3 mile route back in 2015. I recognize that it's located within limits of disturbance, including existing roadways, a railway line, and a utility right-of-way. And that decision was made, and the CPCN was granted to minimize adverse environmental impacts to the surrounding communities. However, today our focus has been construction, dewatering, and the amendment to that CPCN. There have been concerns raised both in the comments earlier today and the comments that were filed regarding the potential of erosion and mobilization of soil when returned water is put in the respective watershed. And as we learned today, that new condition from the state agencies will require that the water be returned to the same watershed. We are concerned that nearby Joint Base Andrews, which has some existing contamination, could be brought into Mattawoman Creek, although we understand from the responses that that is far enough away where it will not pose any concern. However, I'd just like to ask, I guess this would be for you, Mr. Kelly. When filtered water is returned to the respective watershed, have these concerns regarding either erosion or this additional turbidity, are these concerns addressed in the wetlands permit?
Yes, I would say that the wetlands permit has provisions in there for monitoring. They do water quality monitoring as well. There are a number of parameters there. So I would say to the extent that this is covered, it would be within the provisions of that wetlands permit.
And any future erosion or sediment control that occurs during the construction of the project, who monitors that? Is that the county officials or your state agency?
I believe it's delegated through the provisions of the wetlands permit, but there is some language in the wetlands permit that calls into or speaks to the county involvement too. But I'm not aware of I don't have the depth of knowledge of the detail with respect to that. But I do believe that it is covered, that there is on-site monitoring of the construction of the pipeline.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. This matter, this request for the amendment to the CPCN has been before the commission since September when Mattawoman Energy filed it with the agency. We've had the one meeting back on November 4th of 2020 to initially consider the request. The commission has had over a month to review the downstream strategies report, which was relatively brief at 5 pages. The commission has also had an opportunity to review the responses of both the state agencies and Mattawoman, responding to each and every one of the concerns addressed in the downstream strategies report. And in my opinion, both the state agencies particularly and Mattawoman adequately addressed those concerns to my satisfaction. I do recognize the passion, the emotion, the principles of those community members who testified before the commission today. And I recognize those concerns, and I am sympathetic to many of those concerns. However, the CPCN award to Mattawoman Energy in 2005 is a settled matter. The commission is not revisiting that matter today. The commission rules based on statutes and laws, regulations and policies, and we rely on the input of our science agencies, including the Water and Science Administration and our technical agencies at the DNR's Power Plant Research Program to provide us with critical inputs and components to determine that no significant impacts to the natural environment, the ecology, or the streams and wetlands in this area would be adversely impacted. I believe that the commission needs no additional time to review additional responses. The additional month that was granted at the request of Clean Air Prince George's was to review the downstream strategies report. It was not to provide additional rounds of review. And as I mentioned, even though the responses were just filed on December 4th, the responses were not very lengthy, and the Commission has had an adequate opportunity to review them and accept public comment today from those parties who had an opportunity to review those pleadings. With that, I will be calling a vote on the CPCN matter that is currently before the Commission. And I would move that we approve the CPCN amendment subject to the conditions proposed by the Power Plant Research Program and the Maryland Department of the Environment in their filing dated December 4th, 2020. The vote begins with Commissioner Herman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I agree with your comments. I had I concur with your comments, and I won't take up a lot of time to say so, but I do appreciate and understand the concerns provided by the commenters here and last month, and but I do believe it is time for us to move forward, and therefore I vote aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Richard.
And for reasons I've stated before, because of this process, and I believe we're rushing this decision before, again, the citizens have a chance to, again, adequately respond, I will vote no.
I vote aye. The motion is approved with no additional business before the Commission today. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you. We are off the record.